Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of SFU's Alumni Association, I would like to welcome all of you to our 360 Career Management session today. It's wonderful to see so many alumni and friends joining us. My name is Nicole Dorsers, and I am your Director of Alumni Relations, and today I have the privilege of being your host for this event. One of the many benefits of being online is that today we actually have alumni joining us from all over. I'm joining from Vancouver, where I have the pleasure to live, work, and play on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Before I introduce our speaker today, I want to highlight a few points that will help our session run smoothly. During the session, everyone but the speaker will be muted. If you do have any technical difficulties, please use the chat box located in the bottom of your screen. We've got our wonderful tech staff helping us in the background, so just message tech help and they'll be happy to assist you. During the presentation, we'll also be launching some polls, and this is a great way to interact with the session. If you've logged in via browser rather than the app, you may not be able to access the polls and participate, but that's okay. We will be sharing the results of those polls. And with that, now that we all know how to use them, we're actually going to start our first poll. So we'll just launch that for you. And everyone, this will be your opportunity to test out how those work. So what prompted your registration for today's session? Great, and we'll just give it a few more seconds there to get a few more responses. Fantastic. So from what I can see, we really do have a little bit of everything. So I'm really happy to see that: networking, resumes, interviews, negotiation, all of the above, because we will definitely dive into all of those aspects throughout our session. Following the presentation, if you'd like to ask a question or comment, you can either use the chat box, again, in the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand, and we will acknowledge you and unmute your mic so that you're able to ask your question. You can find the raise your hand function by clicking on the participants box at the bottom of your screen. Within that box, you will see a little blue hand that says raise your hand. So I know Zoom can at times be a new platform for everyone, so let's just go ahead and test that. I'll just have everyone test your functionality in raising your hands. All right, I'm seeing a few go up, a few more seconds. We'll test it out there. Oh, great, seeing lots of blue. Awesome. All right, so you can lower your hands, and then when you do have a question at the end of the session, we'll be able to call on you. So thank you so much. So lastly, so that we can distribute the session to our broader alumni community, our session today is being recorded. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Helen Dewar. Helen is a certified career practitioner who has worked as a career coach for over 20 years in organizations across Canada, the US, and the UK. She works with professionals on their career planning journeys to improve their reemployment skills and define their goals towards finding satisfying work. Helen designed, developed, and facilitated the award-winning Minerva Helping Women Work programs, sponsored by the Minerva Foundation of BC Women, a career exploration, job search, and mentoring program attended by over 500 professional women re-entering the workforce. Welcome, Helen, and with that, over to you.
Thanks, Nicole, and welcome everybody. These are very strange and uncertain times, but we are all experiencing them together. But this is a really good time for us to talk about you managing your career. So today, what we're going to do is look at 4 essential tools or practices that you can work on while you're at home and hopefully be ready whenever that job comes up. Given the fact that you are home and you may not be unemployed, but you should have your resume and your cover letter ready to go. In this session today, we're going to look at 4 key tools that will help you manage your career going forward. But let me say up front, one thing we are not going to delve into, but I would like to mention, is that when you are planning to look for work, it's very important that you look after yourself. And it's crucial to your success that you not spend 8 hours a day looking for work. through my experience, I've realized that 3 to 4 hours a day is probably enough and all you can manage at the moment. So get some exercise in that off time, take breaks to cook, play with your kids, whatever it is, but please don't plan 8 hours a day. That's way too much. So now I'm going to look at the 4 salient pieces for your career search. So obviously we can't give you a career search program in total in 45 minutes, but we can cover 4 key points that you're seeing on your screen right now. And we're going to look first at networking. And what we've done is we've allotted some time at the end for you to ask questions on any of these 4 topics, but also any other topic that you would like to ask a question on, I'll endeavor to answer. I may not have the answer right on the tip of my tongue, but ask it anyway and we can get back to you. So let's start with networking. And how we're going to start this topic is with a poll. So now that you're practiced in doing it, let's see the poll. So the poll is, which of these do you find most challenging? Okay. So it looks like assessing the hidden job market is one of the top ones, and then conducting effective information interviews. So we're going to go through all these topics, and hopefully you can get some tips on how to manage them. So in my opinion, networking is the best way to find a job or work, especially in these times. So when do you think you're going to be in a room again? Probably not for a while. So networking has to take place through your computer and your telephone. You probably remember attending those events, and this will be a little bit different. You'll probably be networking with 1 or maybe 2 people at a time, but it is the key to getting work at the moment. So we have to optimize our tools. We're going to look a little bit at that. And the key networking tools that we're going to look at are LinkedIn profile, the hidden job market, informational interviews, social media groups and chats. And then I've added another little piece at the end called follow-up, which I will address. So let's start with LinkedIn. And just to let you know, this is not a comprehensive presentation on LinkedIn, but there will be one on August 6th with the LinkedIn boys on the SFU alumni website. So if you want to mark your calendars on that one, you'll get a very intensive look at LinkedIn. This is probably your most important networking tool today. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because recruiters and potential employers are now going there first. They go to your LinkedIn, then they go to the top of your resume, and then they decide if they want to go on forward. So your LinkedIn is essential for you to have done properly. I'm sure you're going to get a lot more tips from the LinkedIn boys, but I'm going to give you a few now. A picture is essential. You must have a picture. If I go onto LinkedIn and I see that blank round dot there, I go, oh, I'm not sure I really want to talk to this person. So make sure you have a picture. Make sure that you don't have your, pets in the background. And the other tip on the picture is try not to look right at the camera. We don't want you to look like you've got, a headshot that could be put up for criminal offenses. The next piece in the LinkedIn that I particularly use with my clients is right under your name. And right under your name, you'll usually have a job title or where you're from or some such information. And I suggest that you take those out. Now, in these times, we can work from anywhere and people can hire from anywhere. So what I want to see up front are your strengths or what you would like to do. So maybe 3 words. On mine, I have facilitation, instructional design, and career strategies. You're welcome to go and look at that one. Then comes the About You section in LinkedIn, and that is new in the way LinkedIn has changed a lot over the last year. So About You is very important. This is the place where recruiters are going to scan and look and see if they're interested in you. And just to let you know, it's fine to have bullets here. So if you would like to put bullets up with your top accomplishment statements, that's just fine. It helps them scan it quickly. The last piece that I'm going to talk about on LinkedIn is recommendations. Everybody should have at least 3 or 4 recommendations. Ask people that you work with, ask people you have worked with in the past, and even friends who know you and your working style can give you a recommendation. So again, August 6th, LinkedIn session with the LinkedIn boys. I'll give you far more information on that. The hidden job market is the next tool that we're going to look at and highly requested by all of you. The hidden job market is the job market where jobs are not posted or advertised. And those of you who are in BC, this is the most common place for finding work that is not advertised. So how do you approach it? Well, you approach it through your networking skills. You make sure that your LinkedIn is up to date, and then you reach out to people in your networks. And you reach out through LinkedIn, best way to do it so far, people that you know, people that you've worked with, people that you've studied with, even your professors if you're a new graduate. Those people can all help you access that job market. They can help you by letting you know if there's any work that they know of. It may not even be in their company, but they can let you know that. So here's a trick that I use with my clients. And one of the things that I ask them to do at the end of their networking conversation is to ask the person if there's anyone else they think that I should talk to. And I recommend that you aim for 2 or 3 new names, and that is the way you build the network. Now, reaching out to people is great, but you've got to follow up. And that's our 5th piece over on the right-hand side of the slide. This is the key piece to keeping your network alive. So making sure that you do record all the information that you get from those people, but also following up. And one way to follow up that is perfectly acceptable is to send them a thank you note. So everybody that you talk to in that hidden job market or who has not posted a job, then I would send a thank you note to. It can be done on email, very acceptable in this time. The other thing you can do is you can follow companies of interest and people of interest on LinkedIn. And don't be afraid to try to connect with people. Just yesterday, I had 2 people never heard of, but they wanted to connect with me. When I went into their profiles, I found out they were also in the career business. So making sure that you scan the LinkedIn profiles of people that you're interested in and companies that you're interested in. And don't be afraid to tell them that you're looking for work if you are. So that's the hidden job market briefly. Next is a very important tool that probably is more than just a connection, setting up informational interviews. It looks like from the poll that a lot of you know already how to do this, but just a few tips on it. Consider sending a message to people asking for an informational interview. And I always recommend that you say just 15 to 20 minutes. And then if they want to connect with you, you do that connection. But informational interviews are different than job interviews. In that informational interviews, you have control of the interview. So do your research. Find out about the company that the person that you're talking to is. Find out about the person if you can. And make sure that you have 7 to 10 questions about the job or the company that they're working for. You can ask more questions on informational interviews later if that's not enough for you, but I think most of you seem to know how to do that. So on top of your LinkedIn profile, you're probably going to be using social media groups and chats. So if you're on that, then it's important that you keep it very professional. Twitter, Instagram, and let's talk a little bit about Facebook. Most of you are probably on Facebook. If you're going to use it during your career search, please make sure that it's professional. Posting pictures of your latest party or your picnic or whatever your social life is probably is not a great idea. Try and keep your Facebook professional, and if need be, you can always make a second Facebook account for that and only use it for looking for work. Just to give you a stat on this, 1 in 3 employers reject candidates based on something they found on them online. So along with your LinkedIn profile, they may go to Facebook just to check you out. Make sure it's professional. Make sure anything that you post on any networking site isn't going to offend or alienate a prospective employer. The last piece then is the follow-up piece. And no matter how good you are at setting the network up, it needs to be maintained. So following up on your networking contacts is extremely important. You know, just giving them an update of what you've been doing in the last month or what jobs you've been applying for or who else you've talked to is very important. This will make your overall practices or efforts much more successful. Keeping that network alive is so important. So that's the key networking tools for today. And now we're going to have a look at your major tool, which is your resume. So your well-intentioned networking skills or even connections won't be as successful unless you've got a resume ready to send. So very often, probably 75 to 80% of your connections on your LinkedIn will say, can you send me your resume? So let's have it ready. Let's get it done while you've got time to get it done, and maybe even before you start your networking, so that you can have it ready to send to somebody. So today there's an average of 250 CVs received for each job position. And the last 3 clients I've had have told me that there's over 300 to 400 applications. So you want your resume to stand out. You want it to be the best it can be. Even though there's very various theories on how to write resumes. I'm going to give you one today, one that has been successful for my clients and that you're welcome to use. Even though there are all kinds of resumes out there, like infographic resumes now, there's video resumes, there are YouTube videos that you can post with a resume on it or you speaking about your resume. There's just really three that we're going to consider. And two of those three are very important for HR people and for recruiters. So let's look at the dynamic resume types then. So the best resume formats out there right now, and things may change, are chronological, functional, and combined. The key factor is that recruiters only take 5 to 7 seconds after the dreaded ATS has been pulled to read your resume, 5 to 7 seconds. They likely take a finger, they run down the right-hand side where you should have your dates. They look for gaps. They look for keywords out of their posting. But if it's 5 to 7 minutes or seconds, you've got to make it succinct. So what do they scan for in those 5 to 7 seconds? They look at your formatting. They look at your aesthetics. How did you set up your resume? So here's a tip. All resumes have a header with your name on it. We no longer put addresses on resumes, but we do put emails, telephone numbers, and LinkedIn addresses. The email and the LinkedIn addresses on the top of your resume should be hyperlinked so that anybody can just click on it and find out a little bit more about you. Your education is always required, and we'll talk about a little bit about that when we talk about the formatting. But people are now, yes, looking at your resume. Of course they are. And if there's some indication in the ad that the resume is important, make sure you have it in. And in cases of applying to academic institutions, your education should go right up top. Nowadays, it's quite interesting that education is still important, but recruiters are looking for what skills you have. And they're looking to see if you are trainable. So yes, education by all means important, but also really important that you talk about your skills in a positive way, which we'll review in the next slide. They also do a general scan for grammar, spelling, and punctuation. And being a stickler myself, I know if I see a spelling error or a typo, that resume is likely put aside. If you can't have it perfect, it does say something about you. So be sure that you not only use spell check, but you scan that resume yourself, looking for every typo, punctuation, or spelling mistake. And I also suggest you have someone else look at it for you, because other eyes sometimes find things that we don't find. So this information that they're doing in their 5 to 7 minute scan is generally enough for them to decide whether or not to follow up with you, or even to go further afield to find out more about you. So reading the resume in more detail. So let's look at the formats that I'm suggesting that you use today for a dynamic resume. So on this slide, you can see that there's a path that you're going to take. And I'm just going to briefly talk about each one of these so that you know this is the order that you should write your resume in, except if you're applying to the educational institutions, and then your education will move up above your accomplishment statements. So remember the days when we had objective in the top of our resumes? We no longer do that. We use that space to tell a recruiter or an HR person more about ourselves in a concise, professional summary. So what I want to see there is 3 to 4 sentences about you and what you have to offer. Remember, they may only look at this summary. They may not go into your resume. So make sure that it's concise and it's professional and it offers things that you have to offer to the company. So that is on all resumes, your concise professional summary, but I'm here to tell you now that HR people and recruiters are still leaning towards the chronological resume. That's the first one that we had on the list. It is the resume that works from closest experience, so maybe the job that you just had or you're working in now, down to older experiences, but not going back more than 10 years. So you have your summary, and then you're going to start your accomplishment statements on a chronological resume. And accomplishment statements are statements that tell the recruiter what you've done in the past. They start with an action verb, and please do not use required to or responsible for. I want an action verb starting that accomplishment statement. And your accomplishment statement should be qualified into, maybe there's a number if you're in the sales field, maybe there's a purpose behind what you were doing, the number of employees that you supervised, if that's one of your statements, but each accomplishment statement has to be qualified. Education, you do it from your most recent, so if you've got a master's degree, that goes first, then your bachelor's degree. In most cases, unless asked for, your high school is not relevant. But anything post-secondary is relevant, so that education goes in there. After that, I'd like you to record any awards and recognition that you have. Maybe you were the chair of a volunteer committee. Maybe you won an award for something that was team-based. That's the section that where you put those things in. And then finally, you should have a section on volunteering or whatever contributions you've made to your community. This is not anything really to do with work, although some work places do have volunteer requirements. I want to see them all there. It's so important to give them a rounded picture of you as a person, showing them that you do volunteer. So those are the essential pieces of a chronological resume. Now let's look at the others. The second one on your slide was functional. So some of you may know these as skill-based resumes. And yes, we have all written those, we've used those, but they're not popular. They are not popular with recruiters and HR people because they can't see the history of your work experience or your professional experience. I'm not suggesting that you do a functional resume unless, as in my experience, I've worked with people that haven't worked for 15 or 20 years. So then we have to pull skills from their life for the last 15 years, their volunteer work for the last 15 years. That's a very rare occasion, but that I would use a functional resume for. You can also use it if you're making a career change and you want the recruiter to see your transferable skills. So yes, a functional resume, but believe me, they're not popular. I wouldn't go there unless you're absolutely sure you want to. The other place you might use a functional resume, might, underlined, is if you've got huge gaps. So when I talked about the people that I worked with that hadn't had a job for 20 years, that's a huge gap. If you've got a huge gap of, say, 5 years, you could do a functional resume. But in that case, you have to explain that gap, not in your resume, but in your cover letter. We'll go to that in a minute. So the third resume that is popular with HR and recruiters is the combination resume. And that's a combination of your work experience and skill-based attributes. So this is really good for people making a career change, or if you're looking for something totally different than what you're doing. This is a place for recording some transferable skills in your accomplishment statements, but also giving them your career history, the combination. So people with some employment gaps can use a combination. I wouldn't suggest it for 20 years. And if you've got a diverse range of skills and you're looking to go to a new workplace, combination is the best. Also, I must say that a combination resume is also good for people that are in creative fields. So they can show their creative skills, maybe designers, graphic designers, and the tech field. Combination resumes work for those folks as well. So now let's look at, sorry, I'm just flipping my notes here. So let's look at another tool that you may have to use, which is a cover letter. And we're going to do a poll on this first to just see where you're at with a cover letter. All right, it's very interesting that the 69% are saying yes. So I'm here to tell you that a cover letter is not necessary in all cases. A cover letter is definitely necessary if it's asked for in the job posting. When it says, please send a cover letter and resume, yes, you have to write a cover letter. But there's a 17% chance out there that they're going to read that cover letter. So if it's not asked for and required, I wouldn't do it. Make your resume speak for you. You don't need to write a cover letter. And the other piece is that they take 2 to 3 seconds to scan a cover letter. So it's important that when you do write it, that you write it in a concise format. The best ones are brief, concise, and compelling. And I want you to ask yourself these questions before you even write a cover letter. Why are you writing it? Is it crucial that I send a cover letter? Am I starting a new career? And do I have an employment gap past 6 to 12 months? So why are you writing it? You're writing it to give them more information about yourselves and to target what they're asking for in the job ad if you're writing the letter. Is it crucial? No. Only if it's required or asked for. Are you starting a new career? Yes, I would write a cover letter. I would also explain why you want to start a new career and start by putting in some of your transferable skills for the recruiter to know what it is you're looking for. And again, we talked about employment gaps before. If they're past 6 to 12 months, I would write a cover letter to explain that gap. Okay, what's our next slide, Christine? Sorry. This is the big one, job interviews. Believe me, everybody is nervous about job interviews. But if you're prepared to go into the job interview, you will do much better than trying to wing it. I do not suggest you try to wing it. But the thing nowadays is you may never interview in person again for quite a while. Not only is the person-to-person interview disappeared with COVID, but organizations are finding that online job interviews are very productive. So usually they will be conducted by Zoom or Skype or WebEx or Microsoft Teams, any of those programs that allow for the potential employer to see what you're offering. There's also new automated platforms that'll make video interviews with robots even more common. And you're probably looking at me thinking that can't be true, robots. I had a client 5-6 years ago that had to do a job interview online. It was very new then. She was working in the global arena, so she knew that the interview answers were going to, I think, possibly 3 different countries, and she had to do it online. So make sure you're prepared for some of these. Make sure when you're asked for an interview that you ask them what platform they're using so that you can practice and be familiar with that platform and how it works. Some of them you will not see a recruiter. Now you might on Zoom and Skype, but if you get into one of these video interview platforms, you may see the questions come up on the screen and you have to type an answer in. So that allows them, A, to put that out to many more people than a face-to-face interview, and secondly, allows them to see how you would answer. It's not likely that you're going to end up with one of those. You're probably going to end up with a Skype or a Zoom interview. Be prepared to present yourself in the best possible way. Pretend that you're going to a face-to-face interview. Make sure you're dressed for an interview. I don't mean you have to wear a 3-piece suit, but make sure that you are dressed and ready to present yourself. So making a good impression on the telephone, on Zoom, and in person takes preparation and practice. Prepare your pitch. You're likely going to be asked, tell me a little bit about yourself, or what do you want us to know about you? Those are very important things. Anticipate what they may ask you and write out your questions. This cements it in your brain. Very important that you do that. Practice your answers. Get a friend to help you. Get your partner or someone that can listen to your answers and make suggestions on how to improve them. Short and sweet is the answer to good answers to interview questions. Next, you have to prepare questions for them. Don't think they're not going to ask that question. At the end of an interview, you'll probably get, do you have any questions for us? 5 to 7 questions you should have in your pocket. You may have covered them in the interview, but have them there to ask at the end of the interview. Show enthusiasm. And then, again, with my pension for follow-up. Make sure that you get names and email addresses so that you can send thank you letters. Some of the things you have to be aware of is you need to let the interviewer lead on the question of salary. Make sure that you have researched what the salary range for the job that you're applying for is. And they will at some point ask you, what are you looking for in compensation? Make sure you prepare for that. So just to add in here, you've got a very interesting curated resource list on the SFU alumni website, which is several articles on all of these topics. Hopefully that you can go there. You can find out what the current practices are, what HR people are saying, and then hopefully get some more tips from that curated resource list. So the last topic that I want to talk about is probably the most difficult and the most poorly prepared for, and that is negotiating your salary or negotiating your compensation. You know, you do negotiations every day. You negotiate what time your kids are going to go to bed. You negotiate how much time that they're going to have online. You negotiate on paths you're going to drive to. So it is in you to be a negotiator. It's just pretty scary to a lot of people. And not to be gender biased here, but ladies, if you're on here, you don't negotiate well as a group of women. For instance, if there's 10 KPIs in that job interview or job posting, fellows will tell the interviewer they can do all 10. And women will say, oh, I can do 6. I'm not so good on the other 4. No, don't go there. Get prepared to do a very solid negotiation. You want it to be a win-win solution. Okay, so can I have that slide? Just to let you know that those that negotiate their salary up front can add up to $1 million over their lifespan of working. So make sure that you're doing it right from the start. Some people never negotiate. That's a huge mistake. You have to be prepared to negotiate. The very first thing you need to do is find out the range for the salary within your industry, within the sector that you're working in. You can go to paypal.ca or rather payscale.ca. You can find often in postings, especially government postings, they'll put a range in. You can go to Monster. Sometimes they have range. LinkedIn sometimes has a range. Glassdoor sometimes has a range. It's so important that you know what you need before you go into the interview. In fact, when the person calls you for the screening interview on the telephone, which may happen, you may ask what the range for the job is. The other side of the coin is that range may be too low for you. So you may not want to waste your time or their time going through the interview process. The other thing that's important to know is it's not just salary in your negotiation. There are many other things that you can negotiate. Usually that negotiation happens after you've been made the offer, but let's look at some of them, and you can definitely go online and find out what others are available for negotiation. Consider a signing bonus in some organizations that may be there. You may want to negotiate flex hours. And just to let you know, there's all kinds of ads, job ads out now with remote in brackets. So if you still want to stay at home and work remotely, that may be a negotiation. Depends on what the organization itself has as their policies. but they're changing daily. So if that's something important to you, you can negotiate that. You can negotiate vacation, of course. There's usually a set number of weeks, but you can negotiate it. You can negotiate your benefits. You can negotiate your benefits starting date. In some organizations, they don't start your benefits until after your probation period, which is usually 3 to 6 months, but you can negotiate having them started right up front if you want. There are other things you can also negotiate, so make sure you do your homework on that one. The one other thing that I want to say is some of you who are in the sales business or the service business may get a car as part of your compensation package. Make sure you ask if it's tax deductible. Otherwise, you're going to be taxed on that. Oh, that's a tip. The other piece that I think is really important to ask is, what is their policy on professional development or education? You want to keep growing. You want to be a learner. You want to put out there that you're a learner. So asking that question is good. So those are in encapsulated forms, the 4 things that we advertised that we were going to talk about today. But we're really curious to hear your questions about these topics. And as well, any other topics that you have that you may want to ask questions on. Thanks for being here today, and thanks to the SFU team for making it easy. Now, what is it you'd like to know?
Thank you so much, Helen, for sharing all of your expertise with us. I do know that we're actually at time, so I'm just going to let everyone in the audience know that we will still be participating in a Q&A. But if you do need to leave, we definitely acknowledge that we're at that 45-minute mark. We've got a lot of individuals that do need to get back to their work at home space. So with that, Helen, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I know I took a lot of, I had a lot of takeaways, definitely recognizing how important that LinkedIn profile is, the importance of choosing the appropriate resume style. And I think for me, in summary, was really about negotiation and how everything is on the table. And with that in mind, as for those of you who can, you're welcome to stay on, and we will go through a few questions. I actually want to highlight a question that we have right away from Sonia. So thank you so much for asking. And Sonia asks, if the interviewer did not bring up salary, how do you open up the discussion about salary? And is it too early? And when is it too early to bring it up?
Okay, you want them to bring it up first. If that's the ideal. Do not bring it up at the beginning of your interview. If it hasn't been mentioned, bring it up at the end before you ask your questions, or it can be one of your questions. However, make sure that you're asking for a range, not what is the salary. Okay?
Thank you so much, Helen. We've actually got a lot of great questions. I'm so excited about this. There's so many coming through in the chat, so thank you for throwing them down there. We've got one from Christine, and it says, if on furlough, should your resume acknowledge that you are currently employed, or the date that your furlough began as your end date for the job? Great question, Christine.
Yeah, you should acknowledge that you're on furlough in your resume for sure, or maybe a statement right underneath your professional experience saying, because of COVID, whatever has happened, for sure. Furlough can turn into termination, but we don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen. So put it in there for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, I just want to share my enthusiasm for these questions. These are fantastic. So we've got one from, I believe, Morrison. I could be wrong on the first name. But the question is, any tips for submitting resumes online through software portals? I find I have to retype my entire application.
Yeah, that often happens. In fact, I advise my clients not to post a resume on LinkedIn. Have your LinkedIn concise and tease them to ask for your resume. Yeah, I don't know how you get around that. Are you PDFing it? Important that you do that, or save it in .docx, D-O-C-X. That translates really well, hopefully. A lot of those places also have an application form, so be careful. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Alfred. When asked about salary during an interview, would you suggest replying with a range or use it as an opportunity to ask what the company is prepared to pay?
You can do either way. Do it either way. Politely say, you must have a range for this program. Could you tell me, or for this job, could you tell me what it is? Or you can just straight out say, what is the range you plan for this job? Sure.
Thank you. And again, these questions are fantastic. There was so much great content in there. So another question that we have from the audience, if you make it to an in-person interview, is it reasonable to expect a phone call or a bit of a debrief conversation?
You mean after the interview? You'll get a phone call up front, setting it up. That could also be a screening interview. So be prepared for that. Have your resume beside you, making sure that you know what you told them. That could be a screening interview. At the end of the interview, I suggest you follow up. I'm not sure they will. You can follow up and ask for feedback on that resume. Not everybody gives it. Some give a pat answer, but in a lot of cases, you will get some valuable information.
Awesome, great. Now we've got a question from Heather. You recommended hyperlinks for LinkedIn in your resume. And Heather says, I heard ATS systems screen out resumes with hyperlinks. Is this, what are your thoughts on this? Is this true or not?
I've not experienced that, although, as I said earlier, the dreaded ATS systems, we really don't know what they screen in and out, but I've not had a problem with that, Heather, no.
Perfect. And I do see lots more questions, so I know we are over. I'm going to propose that we do 5 more minutes of questions, and then I'll wrap it up and share some exciting events that are actually on a similar topic. So there'll be lots of resources, and they'll be online as well. So I think we probably have time for a couple more questions. We've got one from Janet. What changes do you see in the labor market once COVID settles down?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody really knows. I do think that most organizations are trying to keep their permanent staff. However, some part-times have been laid off or furloughed. I really can't predict, but I do know that there's still lots of job ads up. So don't be discouraged. There's lots of work out there.
That's fantastic. So I've got one here from Anthony, and I'm just going to read what he's asked. So is it welcome to contact a professional as a student to inquire about a specific industry and or job, given that now coffee sit-downs are kind of off the table for the time being?
Yes, definitely it is. Making sure you've got 5 to 7 questions that you want to know either about the job or the industry that person is in. You can do it on the telephone, or you can do it on Zoom or Skype or one of those. Sure. And usually 90% of the people are very happy to talk to you.
Right. And actually, I'm going to add in one more question. I see one here from Samantha that I think is actually really applicable to a lot of our audience today. And Samantha asks, I have gaps due to raising kids and once due to illness. How exactly do I address in the best way? My last name has a hyphen. Is it possible computers will screen out? So I guess those are 2 questions.
Won't screen out your name, and you do address your gap, but in a cover letter. So this pertains to exactly what I was saying. If you've got those gaps, you do explain them in a cover letter. Not in your resume. You don't need to. They'll figure that out by the dates. Okay?
Awesome. Fantastic. So again, Helen, I just want to thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. I know, as I said, I learned a lot. And I just really want to share my enthusiasm again for all of these questions. This is absolutely fantastic. And I will say, I'm really pleased to see this level of engagement with our attendees, as we do have a host of other career-specific events coming up. So I'm going to share those with everybody, and you will also be receiving an email from us following this event. It's a really quick email with a 2-minute survey in there. It's really important that everyone take the time to fill that out because we do use that feedback to influence future programming. So please do take that time. But I do want to just reference back to one of the resources that Helen mentioned. We've got our curated resource section that is a newly added page to our website, all focused on fantastic career content. And that link is actually just being posted in the chat box now, but there's lots of great information there, so please do follow up. We also have an entrepreneurship panel led by SFU's Director of Entrepreneurship, Sarah Lubick. As mentioned as well, we've got another event taking place, Are You the Rockstar Candidate That Employers Are Looking For? All on networking. And this is led by Jamin Patel, who is a professional in the industry, and he has led sessions and packed rooms across Canada and globally as well at other institutions like Harvard and the London School of Economics. So it'll be great to check out. And as Helen mentioned, our LinkedIn pages are exceptionally important. And we do have a session coming up with the LinkedIn guys who are former LinkedIn employees and know all of the ins and outs. And all of those sessions are available free of charge. And you can register on the alumni events page. And I will the link isn't going to be sent, but you can register on the SFU alumni webpage by clicking the tab News and Events, and all of them will be listed. So with that, once again, I just want to give a massive thank you to you, Helen, the alumni relations team, everyone who joined us today and participated through asking questions, as well as our IT that we have helping us in the background, our events teams. Everyone's done such a great job, and I really do just want to extend my gratitude. So with that, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all online again soon. Have a great day.